A customs summit for countries in the BRICS blocs, which includes Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, is underway in Cape Town. BRICS represents 1/4 of the world's GDP and 42% of the global population. It comes at a time when the Global Financial Integrity Group reports that more than 2 trillion rand worth of trade is illicit. Sars Commissioner Edward Kieswetter addressed the summit this morning on challenges and opportunities in customs partnerships. Thank you so much for joining us, Commissioner. You said this morning that despite the workshops, the agreements and advanced technology, BRICS countries still lag on effective trade and related tax issues. And of course, that can lead to losses.
Thank you, Melissa. The original intent of BRICS is to strengthen the cooperation and collaboration between the 5 countries that represent a significant portion of the world's developing countries and also, therefore, the individual citizens of each of these countries. And we must never forget that the work we do must impact people's lives. And really, since the inception, 14 years ago, we tend to get into agreements and various other legal instruments that enables us to do certain work, but very often don't make sufficient progress. So the focus this year, with South Africa as the host of the BRICS Heads of Customs Meeting, is about how do we create a bias for action. We can move beyond the agreements because it is the execution of these agreements that ultimately brings value. You pointed out the extent and the proliferation of illicit trade, and the numbers are astronomical. And this means that the countries who should be gaining legitimate revenue from this is denied that revenue, and that has an impact on goods and services delivered to the most vulnerable and poor. But more important, it's not just about taxes. The customs function in every one of these countries is also about protecting society from harmful and illegitimate substances. It is about the integrity of the domestic economy, and it's also about the efficient and effective facilitation of legal trade across our borders. So it's broader than just tax collection and ultimately integral to the economic well-being of South Africa and of all the BRICS partners.
So there's also been problems with importers under-declaring their consignments coming into the country, and you've had numerous instances where the country loses millions then. Some of these consignments coming from places like China. How does our cooperation as part of the BRICS bloc help here?
So there are 3 areas of cooperation that we are highlighting on, especially to address the issue that you have raised now. And we have very good relationships with China and all our BRICS partners. So an important enabling mechanism to address the level of illicit trade is the exchange of information. And so one of the core focuses over the next 2 days was how do we facilitate a more easier exchange of information between these 2 countries. The point you raise about under-declaration or trade mispricing is because between the country that exports a good or service and the country that imports it, there is a fabrication of a fake declaration certificate, customs declaration, that then understates the value or misrepresents the goods that are entered. Now, when we are able to have the direct information between the 2 customs authorities, you are able to disintermediate any fabrication of a fake declaration. And so information exchange is important. The second area of collaboration is mutual recognition of authorized economic operators. Because if the country trusts each other's accreditation system, then we can also identify the honest and the compliant traders and give them a so-called green lane experience. And then the third area of collaboration is capacity building. Each of our countries tend to have different areas of expertise, and one of the things we want to strive for is how can we leverage each other's facilities? How can we leverage each other's competencies to uplift the entire, between ourselves, we employ 150,000 employees between 5 countries, and therefore working together to improve our capability to do joint enforcement actions, to recognize honest and compliant traders, are all part of facilitating the flow of legitimate goods and services across and between our countries, but also at the same time to detect any fraudulent or illicit trade.
So SARS has also found that China's state railway group CRRC overstated the price of locomotives sold to Transnet in a deal some years back and subsequently owes SARS over 3 billion rand. Do you know if we have made any progress on that issue?
You know that I'm able to say very little about that. We are currently, except to give our viewers the assurance that we address these issues in a professional way without fear or favor, and our current engagement, I am sure, will bring resolution to these issues in a way that is fair and amicable, and protects the rights of each of these parties. So we've made good progress, and I think we will be able to resolve that soon.
Just the last question, Commissioner. Presumably, you've been following what is happening in the trucking sector at the moment with the attacks on cargo and drivers. As a revenue service, surely you would be worried of the implications if goods do not reach ports. What's your take on these developments?
Let me first tell you, as a South African, I'm concerned about that. Our state of lawlessness, the disregard for law and order, the rise of criminal and corrupt activity should be a concern for every South African. From a customs perspective, what those who believe that it is okay to interrupt these trades in goods and services, ultimately we are harming ourselves. Because to the extent that these goods do not reach the ports of exit, of export, it means that many of these goods will go to waste. It means a reduction in foreign currency that is then returned to South Africa for the goods that we export. It means that our balance of trade, our balance of payments are negatively affected, and ultimately it has a negative impact on our economy that then translates into the impact on the ordinary man and woman in the street. And South Africans have to realize that we are part of a system. All of these things are interconnected. And if we break any part of the system, ultimately we as South Africans pay the price.
Thank you so much for your time. That was Sars Commissioner Edward Kieswetter.